Chambersburg School Directors. Yesterday, the board met in executive session. Really good, robust discussion on superintendent goals. I often go in my history lesson here, so this was probably the 12th time I got to experience some type of superintendent goals, and I thought the process was the best yet. I think the way Chris laid it out, I think it was very helpful to all the board. A lot of good ideas. I'm sure Chris took a lot of good information away and a lot of candid conversation. So it was a really, really good session, I think, for superintendent goals, and that for board, that'll make our job hopefully a little bit easier here in January. We do a mid-year, and May, June when we do a final. So I appreciate everyone's participation and contribution to superintendent goals. Oh, and we talked about board goals a little bit too. So that was executive session. There was no executive session this evening. We just sat and had a social session, which is even better. So item 2.01, please rise and join me for Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 3.0, excuse me, 3.01, Superintendent's Report. Mr. Bigger.
Thank you, Mr. Norcross. The PA Great Schools banner is behind us. We're excited to display that banner and the work to earn that designation. Each school will also get a banner, so we hope to get those out and in each school for their recognition of their work for that. We are in the process of getting the student board rep here at the table. I believe, I'm looking at Mrs. Luffy, that Cassius will select someone. And when we find the name, we will add a seat and have a student board rep coming to our meetings in the future per our new policy. Just want to remind everybody that, not that you don't know, but it would be nice if we had a state budget. And all the talk about the federal budget, we did receive our federal money, but we haven't received any state money for quite some time. Pressure's growing, mounting, and certainly would be very helpful if we just had a budget. So unfortunately, I'm not hearing an end to this stalemate anytime soon. We're talking late October, early November at this point in time. So it's getting expensive for us to use reserves. So anything anybody can do to keep the pressure on to get a state budget would be appreciated. I'll start my staff presentation tours where we update the district, state of the district, where we are with strategic planning in October, early October, so hope to have them complete throughout that month. We will send a digital community newsletter out also this coming month, and then we'll work on an annual report after you receive the comprehensive academic report that Mr. Widman and the team will be doing. In the future, we have board presentations, the entry plans from the directors, the comprehensive data report that I just mentioned. We'll update you on the graduation policy, updates and changes, reading by third grade plan and intervention that supports that, and then also the capital project lists for the upcoming year and a 3-year budget plan to get us to the promised land in the next 3 years with our projects. I do want to thank everyone for all the work in getting the start of the year up and running. We always have bumps and bruises, and that's typical for the size of our district, but it's a lot of work and a lot of energy for that first couple weeks. So thanks to everyone for their patience and also for their work in getting things straightened out. End of report.
Thank you, Mr. Bigger. Any questions for Mr. Bigger? What about the young man that you had mentioned about being the representative on the board?
Parker Christoffel, yes. He was the one that actually emailed me, where are we with the status of this?
Okay.
All right.
So by all intents and purposes, as a sophomore, I think he's going to be a formidable representative someday in our community at a board meeting or a commissioner. He aspires to be in politics. So I'm excited. I hope he gets picked, but there's no guarantee that he would get picked. They have to go through a nomination and selection process. So I'm hoping it's him, but I can't guarantee that it is.
stuff the ballot box. Okay, item 3.02, President's Report. Start off here a little bit. You know, people often say to me in my past couple of years when they know I'm on a school board, they're like, what are you doing that for? Are you crazy? What's that about? And, well, I don't know if I'm crazy or not. But the point to my comments tonight are, one thing I always tell them, they say, oh, it's a thankless job. Well, there's certain parts of it that are thankless, and it happens when you get to sit up at this table, and especially when you have a microphone in front of you, and even with a gavel, everything you say gets put out on the gospel of social media and everything else. So there's always two sides to it. But I always tell people, I said, it's really, really easy. And it's one fundamental rule I follow. And you tell people why you're going to do something, i.e. vote, and then you do that, or you vote that way. And then when you're asked again later, you tell them the same reason why you did it. Where I think people often get in trouble is where they keep changing their story. So the preface to that is for many, many months now, I've sat here and talked about the total dollars of schools of distinction by 2030 investment that the community, we're asking the community to make. And I have repeatedly said $240 million. Well, you're going to see tonight, spoiler alert, sorry, Tammy, you're going to see tonight that number has changed. That number right now, as an estimate, and you can put that in bold, italic, flashing lights, an estimate, we're at 270 million as the low estimate, and 290 is a high estimate. So again, I've been accused in the gospel of social media and public comment that I make these comments as fear-mongering or trying to scare the public. Or people maybe perceive that I am against these projects. I think my track record speaks for itself. I am totally in favor of these projects. And I share this just to be transparent, open, and honest. Again, rewind here about 2 minutes ago, this is an investment that we're asking the community to make, taxpayers. And you're gonna see some charts, probably not tonight, but on a future night, that are gonna show how much of an investment we are asking, an additional investment we are asking the community to make. So I don't think we can say it enough, and it is what it is. One of the challenges and efforts this board and administration are going to have to do now is figure out how in the heck we're going to pay for this thing, right? And there's going to be some tough decisions to be made. And I will continue to be transparent and say, I apologize that my 240 million comment I've said over and over again was dead wrong. As you notice, if you've been a regular here or listened to us online or watch us, you know, when we've had architect presentations, I've often asked the question, what's the estimate? What's the estimate? We'll get it to you. We'll get it to you. We'll get it to you has been their answer. Someone told me an analogy about boiling a frog, but I won't go there. We'll get it to you. Well, we finally have some new preliminary numbers, and it's big, but it is what it is, and we'll work with what we have, hope that it's less, and plan for hopefully a little bit of contingency if it is more, and that we never have to use that contingency. So that's my president's report for this evening, and that's going to preload right into the item 4.01, funding schools of distinction. I assume, Mrs. Stauffer, you'll go first, and then Mr. Fry. In reviewing the presentations, I don't know what your preferences are. Tammy, do you want questions, and then Mr. Fry, or wait till you both present? What do you two prefer?
I'm fine with that, yeah.
Okay. What's that?
Questions along the way.
Questions along the way,
Yeah.
or wait till you're done, Tammy?
I prefer at the end of my presentation, but
Well, you just walked over there and said you didn't matter.
No, I meant questions for Tammy before John speaks.
I knew where Ed was going.
All right.
Now it's Tammy's microphone.
Okay, all right, good. All right, so we're going to talk this evening a little bit about a funding plan or scenario. I do want to emphasize that this is a draft. The numbers will change, but we have been asked to bring something forward to the board to show a potential plan. to get us to the 2030 Schools of Distinction. So this evening, we're going to talk about a few things. I'm going to give you some quick facts on Franklin County, just to kind of show you where we are from an economic standpoint. Look at the Chambersburg Area School District's financial indicators, as far as how we are in terms of our financial wealth. We'll take a look at the history of our general obligation bonds and the debt service capacity that we currently have. And then I'm going to show you a funding scenario that we talked briefly about, I think it was last month or maybe the month before. Didn't really show you anything in writing, but we'll show you that scenario. And then we're going to Mr. Norcross's point, we're going to show you what the estimated funding that is needed for these three projects. So looking at Franklin County, just a few quick facts that I pulled off the U.S. Census Bureau and the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. I think these are all good news things for us. When you look, our unemployment rates have averaged around 4.4%, pretty low as a term of a whole in the community. When we look at our median household income, we are slightly above the state average at around $75,000, almost $76,000. We're right there with the median age. I'm not sure what that tells me, other than we are at 41.6 and the state's at 41.4. I'd like to know what it was a decade ago, but maybe I'll go back and take a look at that. Also a good indicator is while we do have poverty in our community, we're at 7.2% poverty rate versus the state of 12.6. And I think another good indicator of our stability in Franklin County is our homeownership rate, where we sit at 76.4% compared to 69.5. And we're going to move into some of the, Scott, if this is the one, if you could make it a little bigger for me to see, that'd be great. We're going to go into our assessment-based growth. We look at this on a monthly basis in the business office, trying to see if we're going up or going down. And there are times that we go down, and that's when those big appeals come through. But we've seen significant growth in the last couple of years compared to coming out of the COVID years. If you look back from 20 to 21, we only went up 0.81%. Going into 22, we went up 0.86%. And then we had started to hit back kind of where we were before pre-COVID. The good news is that we've seen the base grow over this period of time by $38.8 million. And just to put that in perspective, that's tax revenue that we're going to get without having to raise the millage rate. So that's good news here in Franklin County. Okay, Scott, I'm going to go to the next slide. So, oh, he's going to do it for me. Okay. The second indicator that we want to look at is our earned income tax growth. Most of you know that Chambersburg is an Act 1 school district, and for those of you who don't know what that is, in 2006 they passed Act 1, which allows the taxpayers to shift a portion of real estate tax burden to earned income tax. And the voters in Chambersburg were one of 8 school districts that decided that they wanted to do that. The first year of revenue that came in after Act 1 was in the 2008-2009 fiscal year. And you can see on the chart that we collected just a little over $13.5 million. What we've seen since COVID is really kind of mind-boggling to me because we felt the economy was going to fall off, things were going to go kind of south. That didn't happen. We actually grew earned income tax the most from 2021 by $6 million to where we are today at the end of the fiscal of 24-25, just under $26 million. So a good indicator that one, people have jobs, and two, people's jobs are probably paying more than they were in the past. Okay, so the third indicator that we're going to take a look at is our fund balance growth. I know that there's often a lot of talk about fund balances. We have seen significant growth in our fund balance, which is a good indicator of our ability to afford these projects, if you want to look at it from that standpoint. At the end of the fiscal of 2019, we had a fund balance that represented about 4.8% of our revenue. Very, very small. This is the assigned fund balance. So these are funds that we've identified for potential problems down the road. For example, we have another special needs student move in, or we have additional transportation routes that we haven't planned for that we can use money for those purposes. We have tax appeals that we have to pay back, those types of things. The fund balance grew to an assigned basis of almost $40 million by the end of the fiscal of 2024. So we are now sitting with about 22% of our revenues in terms of the fund balance. The information below there is the committed fund balance. We've also seen growth in that, and as if you recall, the committed fund balance is there for future taxpayer relief. This occurs whenever we collect more earned income tax than we budget, and by law, we have to take that portion and set it aside in a fund balance to be used at a future time. Just to give you a little history, this is one of the things that I think we lose a little bit of a perspective on of at the district. You know, we've had debt for quite a few many years, probably close to 20 if I remember going back and looking. Over the course of the last decade and a half, our debt has remained pretty stable. The highest it was at was during the 16-17 fiscal year, and it was just about $157 million worth of principal, to where we are currently in fiscal 24-25 with just under $118 million of principal outstanding. And when you look at this in terms of how we look in terms of our debt to other districts, I took the comparable districts that Mr. Bigger, I know, has talked to you about at different times, and these are districts that are more of an apples-to-apples approach to us. They're like in terms of our demographics, our size, our revenues, budgets, that type of thing. When we look at that, we are ranked 7 out of 10 on a per-student debt service spend of just a little over $1,082 per student. This puts us at about 6.74% of our expenditures. And again, if you're looking at the graphs, the top graph shows the per-student spend, where we're right pretty much in the middle, and again, the percentage, which again, we're in about the middle of the comparable groups. So where that leads us is to what can we afford to borrow? With the help of my good friend John Fry over here, he always helps us calculate the debt, the remaining capacity. As I mentioned, where we were at the end of the fiscal was just about $118 million in obligation. Our remaining borrowing capacity is currently $274 million. Just to give you a quick idea of how you calculate that, it's a fun calculation, not too complicated as most of our functions are. You're looking at 3 years of your revenue, coming up with an average, multiplying it by 2.25%, and then subtracting that from, or subtracting the total obligation from that borrowing base. So again, we currently have about $74 million that we could borrow. Sorry, I keep switching hands here. Looking at, we were asked to build a funding scenario. Currently, we have a bond that's in existence. That's the 2023 bond that we took out. We have about $8.4 million. What you're going to see on this slide is a scenario of 5 different steps of borrowing that would borrow just a little bit over $217 million. Our goal when we were looking at this was to build a funding scenario to about $230 million. With an estimated interest earned on the money that we would be borrowing of about $4.6 million, we would fund about $231 million that would be available to fund these projects. And you can see Mr. Fry's here. He's actually going to talk about step 1 tonight and what we need to do to make that bond issuance by the end of December of 2025. The second funding scenario in here was to fund the new Green Village Elementary School. I'm starting to try to call it Green Village and get out of the Grandview. Old terms are hard to let go of. Again, we had a funding goal of about $40 million. In order to reach this funding goal, we would be looking at building cash into our debt service, excess cash into the debt service on an annual basis. If you recall from the 2025 budget presentation, we actually have a line item transfer of $7.5 million above and beyond what we owe for debt service this year. That is banking on, to Mr. Bigger's comment earlier on, that we get the state adequacy money, which the governor had proposed at $5.5 million additional dollars coming into the Chambersburg Area School District. We would additionally have to commit to putting an additional $2 million per year over and above that level to get to that $22 million by the end of 29-30. At that point, we would still be short. We would need money to come from some other sources of about $17 million. On the next slide, I've identified a few areas that we could look at. One, we always can look at doing an additional borrowing. I didn't ask Mr. Fry to do that, but that's something he'd be more than willing to do and show us how that would work. We also know that down the road in 2037, our debt service is going to fall off, which will be helpful to the district. We also can look at using the cap reserve. We currently have about $16.5 million sitting in the cap reserve. We do have other capital project needs, and we've built that fund up to sustain those. As you recall, we approved about $2 million of capital projects for this past year. We'll be coming forward probably in October or November with another $2 million that don't address anything with these new buildings. It's just all the other stuff that we have to take care of. We could look at the general fund balance. If you go back to one of the prior slides, I told you at the end of the fiscal year of 24, we had about $39 million. We did make some interfund transfers out of there, so the assigned fund balance is down from that number, but there's still a healthy reserve there at this point in time. And finally, we could look at slowing the building down to give us additional time to build our debt capacity. So, moving towards, I guess this was a few months ago that we had the architects in and talked about a feasibility study. We're looking at the schools of distinction to include a middle school. At one point, we were going to do a remodel. That pushed forward to a brand new building. We're looking at a 4 to 6 intermediate school and a 4 deep elementary school. And you can see on this slide the ranges, the estimate of the square footages, and then the estimate of the cost, ranging anywhere from $274 million to $292 million. And again, these are draft estimated numbers. The plan that we proposed to you or showed to you tonight would net us $231 million, probably close to $231, plus $22 million in reserves. And you can see that will get us a little bit short of where we would need to be on the low end of these 3 projects. So the main question I think that most people said is, how do we afford to do this? How do we afford to build these builds? We need the state to pass the budget, excuse me, and we need the state to give us the adequacy money that the governor proposed of that additional $5.5 million. My understanding is the adequacy money, the plan is to continue to do that for the next, well, I guess it would be 5 years after this year, correct, Mr. Bigger? I think it was for 7 years. Right. We need that money. If we get the adequacy money, it will take and address all of the issues that we need to fund these buildings, 100%. We are planning, or trying to plan, as we showed in the 25-26 budget, to add additional debt service, that $7.5 million, to try to build that fund up. And what we continue or need to continue to do is we need to make a commitment that each year through 29-30, we're going to put an additional $2 million into debt service to fund these projects. We also need to actively continue to identify soft cost savings. Excuse me, that word got a little bit tongue-tied. As we did this past budget, we cut 2 administrative positions, and that was in line with what was going to happen with the grade reconfigurations, the realignments, and these new buildings. So these are some of the things that we need to do and make a commitment to do. And I think that's it. Questions? I'll try to get them back in order.
And slide 4. And this, some of these go back and forth, and often I've referenced Mr. Fry's sheet. That was the estimated millage summary. It was a sheet that Mr. Fry presented to the board in April. You've probably heard me mention it before. And then in a discussion this summer with Mr. Bigger, there was another one for June. So the 771 million, okay, that's in the 2024 assessment base growth. That's the same value of 1 mil that represented on the report of 770,000. That's the 1% of 771. Is that,
I can't say that that is, Mr. Norcross. I mean, this is the representative of the base. To get the value of the mill, we would need to take the mill rate and divide it into the base. I think it would be less than that.
okay.
But without having, I'm not going to be able to do that math in
That's-
my head right now.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And one of the, and for a future discussion, when maybe we get some different versions of this estimated millage summary, the report in April had a value of 1 mil at 882,000, and the June report had 770,000. When you're talking 240 million, people think, well, what does 110,000 mean? Well, when you take 110,000 and a 1.63%, and you compound that over 5 years, after 5 years, that's another $500,000 in debt service. So it does add up, and it shows you the impact of the value of a mill. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
You know, I know these numbers change around, but that was one thing that stuck out to me, and maybe that's a question later for Mr. Fry.
Well, I'll actually address that, Mr. Norcross. There was a calculation error in the April number. And again, that I don't want to say it happens, but it does happen when we're looking at these assessment values. That rate is going to be changing. What the value of the mill is, it's going to change every time that assessment base changes. And so as we're budgeting throughout the spring, the winter, the spring, we're taking that base and kind of projecting it out. So there was an error in that original number, and Mr. Fry actually helped us to correct that further down.
Okay, going to your slide 8, and just make sure I interpret this correct. And that's a good standing where we are right now.
Oh.
That's based on our current.
Where are we at? Is this slide? Is this slide 8?
Slide 8, yes.
Uh-huh. Now these-
Where we're 7 out of 10, you know, you don't want to be 1 necessarily, but I think by the time we add another 230 million, we're going to jump from 7th place to a strong first place.
I would say that's probably likely.
So basically, we're going to flip this chart on its end.
Yeah. This data is actually from the end of the fiscal of '24. This is coming out of our Forecast 5 system, and it's usually a year delayed, but it hasn't changed much from year to year, yeah. But I would agree with you, we probably are going to move towards the front of the line on that one.
The only thing I'd say to that is, that's assuming that those other districts don't
Didn't-
also have 5.
Correct. Good point.
The glass is half full. I like it. Okay. I wrote that on sheet 9. I'm gonna forget that there. On page 11, again, I'm gonna go back and forth on this estimated millage report. So the item 2, the 7.5 million on the second assumption and the 2 million each year, is that the same 7.5 million that would have been in the estimated mills used for debt service in Mr. Fry's chart, and the 2 million is basically the equivalent of a 1.6 tax, or are these in addition to
Percent.
what's on there?
No, that would be
That's
inclusive
a
of what
repeat
Mr.
of
Fry,
what
right,
that is. Okay.
right.
Darn, I was thinking it was another 7.5 million
No.
on top of Mr. Fry's 7.5 million.
No, but again, you know, for us to get that 7.5 additional million, we need the state to give us the adequacy money. We basically did something this year that we don't normally do, and that's assume that that we're going to get the numbers that the governor proposes. We usually take more of a conservative approach and assume we're not getting anything more, but in order to build for these funds, I wish that we had a budget passed right now. Mr. Bigger and I have talked about this a lot, that we could be much more confident in what we're saying if that budget was known, but it is still unknown, almost two months past its due date. So, but to answer your question, yes, that is what John presented.
Well, that helps. And again, I keep dovetailing these two back and forth. But the 7.5 million, again, in the April report, it was 5.5 million. And it was my understanding that was the cash from the previous 3 years of the 1% plus 1, I'll call it. And then in the June report, it jumped up to 9.5, and it was, which is another 4 mills, and I understood, it was my interpretation, and it could have been dead wrong, that 4-point jump was basically the revenue from 3 years of 1%. 3 years of 1% is gonna get us about 4 mils. But now it's at 7.5. So we went from 5.5 in April, 9.5 in June, and now we're at 7.5.
So we're talking millions, not mills. We're talking 7.5 million.
Estimated mils.
Estimated, the debt service would require $7.5 million, not
Okay.
7.5 mils. I apologize for that. If I recall correctly, Mr. Norcross, in April, when we presented the budget, I'm looking at Mr.
Well,
Bigger
maybe
because
this
it's
is
been a while.
Maybe you might, let me see, I think you might have helped me answer my own question.
Okay.
We're still at the 9.5 million on the new form, which is where we were in June. The fiscal year end 2026 estimated mills used for new debt service.
So you're talking mills, not
Right,
millions.
Mills, but we're still at 9.5 mils in this assumption, when we get a new assumption.
Yes.
This aside,
Equates to about 7.5
right. Okay,
Yes.
Good, okay. I think, yeah, I think that was all my questions, Mrs. Stauffer.
Okay.
I'd just like to make a comment. I am glad Mr. Norcross is here to ask these kinds of questions, and I am so glad you have answers. But listen to your presentation, being on the verge of this serious investment and all the financial implications, I was beginning to feel like the first time my wife and I were ready to buy our first home, and but you've given me a lot more confidence that there's nothing to panic about, and just, you know, this is not anything all that unusual.
No, and honestly, I could tell you more confidently if we had that state budget.
Right.
But, and I'm going to keep saying it while I have the microphone. You know, I've been here since 2006, and I'm just being candid with the board. Our financial situation up until probably 2020 had never been very positive. We ran with very little reserves. We were constantly looking at things to cut. While COVID did a lot of bad things, we benefited from it from a financial standpoint. You know, we didn't have expenditures. We had ESSER's money that we could use to support everything. And then, honestly, I'm looking at John. I've never seen an economy like this where we've seen earned income tax increase at such a rapid rate whenever, you know, you're dealing with inflation and we're dealing with all these unknowns. So it's a really kind of weird time. But if the indicators stay the way they are and we can make these commitments, we can commit that the adequacy money is going to go towards the debt service and that we commit to making $2 million more to debt service, we can afford these projects, but we have to make those commitments. That's what has to
Thank
happen.
you.
Yeah.
I'd just like to comment also that I have not only taxpayer friends in other districts, but also school board members that I'm friends with in other districts, and we have an enviable position here in Chambersburg, in my opinion. There are districts not too far away from us that are having declining enrollments and are considering closing schools, not because they're building new schools as we are, but because they have significantly lower incoming students. The people in 2006 who chose to have earned income tax into this reserve that is our homestead farmstead, when you compare what other districts in the area are getting relief from their taxpayer burden, ours is just amazing. And I hear it all the time whenever I'm talking with friends in neighboring districts, and I say, you know, my taxes were reduced by $1,003
Right.
whatever dollars. You know, theirs was peanuts.
Probably 100 maybe. Yeah.
If they're lucky.
Mhm.
So I am friends with one of the people who was on that group that worked on that in 2006. And every time I see Barb, I think about it and occasionally thank her for having had the foresight to do that.
Tammy, not a question for
Oh.
you, but I'm going to use your slide as my prompt.
Okay.
Please go to your slide 12,
Scott, are you doing that? There you go.
or whoever's driving. I'm sorry. Thank you. Just a comment to the board. there on the bottom where Mrs. Stauffer has options, and maybe put a couple, 3 or 4 question marks behind that. That is a decision that this board is going to have to make. So in the interim, Chris and Fay and I spoke about this very briefly earlier this evening. You know, what information do you think would be helpful? I have my idea, and I'll share it with you here again, but I want to ask all the board members to think about what information do you think you would need or would be helpful to you to help make that decision? Okay? And, you know, we're starting to get a little closer with, as we get closer and closer to final design, we'll get closer and closer to the numbers. You know, in November of 2024, we were talking about 175 million. In April of 25, we were talking about 200 million. Tonight, we're at 217 million, plus we have I'm rounding 17 million shortfall. So now we're up into 234, 240 million. So think about what you need, and I would encourage board members to go back to the April Committee of the Whole and look at Mr. Fry's report from there. And again, it's sheets 4 and 5, which is what I refer to often, and you heard it tonight in some of my questions with Mrs. Stauffer, that it shows the steps, and again, in April, we went up to 200 million, because that's what we thought it might be back then. Things change. And then sheet 5 shows you, okay, what's the impact to the investors, i.e. the community? And you see, you know, it's in that 1.6, 1.5% just to fund schools of distinction by 2030, annual. I throw that out. Again, I've mentioned this before. You know, historically, it's 2 to 3% just for this district to operate at status quo. Okay, that's, you know, we do no building projects, nothing, you know, some staffing changes and everything else. It's about 2 to 3% per year is what it goes up. So if you take 2.5%, the middle of that, and you add another 1.5% onto it to fund schools of distinction, we're looking at a 4%, you know, every year. And that goes through 2031. My thought is, and Chris and Fay and I will talk about this some more with probably Mr. Fry, but again, ask the board members to take a look at it. I think if we had this data, your sheets 4 and 5, Mr. Fry, for a $217 million borrowing, a $240 million borrowing, which makes up our 17 million deficit, and maybe one other scenario, and we can maybe see the impact of what that does both in annual taxes, and my guess is we probably have to do one more year. My guess is, depending on how much we go up, instead of ending this 1.5% in 2031, my guess is we're gonna maybe have to end it and go one more year. But just a little bit of just ask of the board, because that's gonna be a big decision we have to make, not real soon, but it's not too far away.
I'd just like to say that one of the areas that I don't think anybody can put a number on, but we need to have at least some estimate of the cost savings that will be recognized by the grade reconfiguration, by the increased efficiency of the larger schools with better HVAC costs, et cetera. There's a lot of potential, as I see it, for cost savings that will be recognized, but I don't know how you put a number to that. It's pretty elusive, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Mrs. Goggin. One thing you can do with that, I mean, you know, holy cow, if we start realizing a lot, then you start carving years off the end of this stuff.
Right.
You know, instead of adding a year, maybe we take a year off. But that would be great. Good point.
Is that possible to aggregate all of that? I mean, I
You
probably
can-
not.
You can get an estimate, but estimates are just that.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there is a possibility of calculating some of that soft cost that we would save. I believe actually
We did an
Dr.
exercise
yeah.
on that. Dr. Long led that exercise. I think we were around 2 million in staffing type consolidations, and maybe 6 million in revenue from sales or leases, depending on how we approached it. So that was a very first blush.
Blush, yeah.
Without any, deep thought about it. So we would have to get a lot more detailed, and we'll do that along the way.
The reason why I ask is because I think that's important for the
Yeah.
public to know that this, we have this, but we're also
Yep.
shaving off and cutting here, so.
Well, I look in my community and I see people who have homes that are 50, 60 years old that are taking the siding off and putting more insulation on, for instance. And, why are they doing that? Not because the siding is that bad, but because they recognize the benefit of
Yeah.
more efficiency in their homes. And so I think that efficiency issue is going to have a potential. I don't know if it'll be realized potential or not, but
Yeah, I think one of the things that I need to know more about, and this has been extremely helpful tonight, is just, like Ed had said, about the impact of how high we would go for a tax increase budget-wise year after year, so that there's not a big surprise to that, that we would never have to go up to the index or anything, that we could keep it reasonable so that people can afford it and make it work. So I think the new document that you're going to be giving us with that added amount, I think would be very helpful to sit and analyze and help us.
One question I have on slide 13, we're building 85,000 square feet of elementary space. How many seats are we short, or how many classrooms are we short with elementary? Like, what is that? This is
I
out
don't
of
understand your definition of short. This is the new
You mean
Green Village.
currently?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, how much space are we trying to add on in total? I think we had a number that we need, and then I think we're building that at an additional size to allow for future growth, right?
We're gonna be at 5 classrooms per grade level. That's 5
Okay.
deep. And then there will be some special ed classrooms. So we're pretty close to where we are at right now
Uh-huh.
with the classrooms and the space. The architects have really trimmed down and made it more compact, so we'll find out tomorrow in our meeting.
So, and that's 5 deep for 4 grades. It's
Correct.
K through 3.
Mhm.
Yeah, so about 20
20.
classrooms. One question I have is, are there other options for that? Like, have we looked at, one thing I think about is, how much do we look at population density maps? And, like, was that a factor? I know, like, the location makes sense for a couple reasons. One, because we have a couple schools in that direction that are closing, and 2, because we actually have land. But did we explore other options much or not, in terms of, one thing I think about is at Stevens, kids that live just south of there, you could hit a baseball, if I was good at baseball.
Correct.
It's a property where you're then busing kids every day 5 miles south to Marion, which is fine.
But I think a little
How
bit
do we
ship has
land on-
sailed on that, because we've already come up with a design.
Yeah.
But I think where you circle back is.
But how do
So the
we?
projects are complete in 2030, debt begins to fall down in 2037.
Mhm.
What does your standard K-3 building look like? Well, Green Village will be your standard now. So if you
Right.
circle back to your Stevens, New Franklin, South
Sure.
Hamilton, and Marion, the schools you're keeping,
Yep.
and do they get converted to the similar comparable school?
Mhm.
And so I think that's another phase in the future where you would do that. Provided the enrollment increases, it stays at 1% with 100 additional kids,
Right.
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
an unknown. I mean, it was definitely projecting 30 years, but we don't know what the next 5
Yeah, yeah.
will be like. So I think that we're situated in a good spot right now,
Mhm.
but that's a plan beyond this one.
Yeah, so I guess I'm just asking to be reminded, how do we land on that as opposed to other options? And I know you toured the district and.
Yeah. If you remember the Crabtree presentation, we went down the rabbit hole of additions to multiple smaller buildings.
And it just,
And it was not
it was just gonna
feasible
cost more in the end.
financially,
Right. Yeah, yeah.
nor could we handle the multiple changes each year to enrollment, to where you would go to school, to the phasing of the projects. I mean, you can't just add additions to 5 schools at the same time.
Right, no.
So if you remember, Fred was sitting here going through that scenario with all those charts. and it just wasn't feasible.
Yeah.
Plus,
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Ben, just
go
keep
ahead.
going.
One other question I had, help me understand how the four options we have, how do our tax increases fit into there? Is a tax increase a fifth option, or are we saying that that is one on slide 12? For example, like when we had the tax discussion in April, well, if you add 1% to a budget over 25 years, that's 25 million, and we're short 22 million. So is that an option 5 as well, or is that already into?
I think that's part of one. Additional borrowing would, the, I don't want to say consequence, the child to additional borrowing is gonna be additional tax increase. You borrow more, you're gonna have to find a way to pay more back in debt
Okay.
service.
Okay,
So
so that's-
they're kind of, they're one and the same, they're connected. The
Yep.
tax increase is based on the amount of increased debt service.
And as is, you're sketching this out, I have to go back to the slides. The cap reserve, like we can tap into that
Yep.
and get that number down as well.
Yep.
So,
That was one of the scenarios right there, is to pay cash for Green Village, an option,
yeah,
where you don't borrow as much and you have the 22 and you use potential capital reserve of 16 million and
Yep.
you wipe out some of your reserves, but you pay cash to the building. Again, that's an option.
yeah.
We're not saying which one's better at this point, they're just saying it's not. The biggest thing to pay attention to, and Tammy said it 3 times, is adequacy was 8.2 in the first year, 5 projected in this year. If it continues for 7 years, even at that trend, downward, what does that do to the plan? And it
Yeah.
really supports the plan of not needing to go to the taxpayers for the making up the difference.
Because the plan, to that point, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, because right now, per Mr. Fry's slide 5 that I keep referencing, it doesn't assume any adequacy funding after this year.
That's
So
correct.
any additional adequacy funding
Correct.
makes
Makes
this look better.
everything look
Yes.
better.
Yes.
That's a good.
You're in your
And I-
worst case
And I
scenario.
feel like we're
spot.
positioned very well.
Yeah.
A point I just make about number 4, slow down the building time to build additional debt capacity. With the way costs are going up,
That's gonna.
I feel like that just costs us way more in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, we have to put a plan on there if the state cuts the 5 million.
Sure.
I mean, we have to have a back, and that's the backup plan.
Yeah. But the longer this drags out, the more concerned I get. And I know we've already pushed our timeline
Yeah.
back, and you feel like the pace, though, is about as fast as we can go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. I mean, right now, just for the public, you're meeting every 3 weeks, right?
Oh, gosh, every 2 weeks, depending on the architect.
To keep the ball rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Yep.
as a reminder for the public. Yeah,
Yeah, I think if we didn't have the state roads around Green Village, it may have been a little faster,
sure.
but nothing monumental.
Yeah.
Those darn road builders anyway.
Yeah, and you wouldn't want a mid-year opening necessarily anyway, so it does make sense in the fall.
You need Ed's team out there to be done.
Yeah.
But the roads are actually a positive in the end compared to the narrow roads that some students are riding buses
Yep.
on to some
Sure.
schools in the area.
Safer.
Absolutely.
I was also going to add, when you were saying about Stevens, the fact that we're taking out the 4th and the 5th grade opens up those classrooms, which then
Yeah.
the Marion students can be redistributed back to
That makes a lot of sense.
because of the open classrooms.
Good.
Other questions? Ms. Harbaugh?
Just to answer your question, Ed, that sheet you have right there in front of you, Mr. Fry's, I can see it from here that one, that would be essential for me to really understand, and I noticed it wasn't in this particular packet, but that would be super helpful as far as deciding between all those options. So that, essential for me to have that sheet whenever we're getting into that, so.
It's good.
Agree.
Yeah, it's really not applicable to tonight because we're talking about one singular bond issue one singular step right now. But good point, thank you. Other questions? I want to follow up on Ben's because he brought a good point when he was talking about elementary space. And I talked earlier about the bottom part of this slide 12. This is a discussion and, you know, heavy lift, I'm gonna say it anyway, for the board a heavy decision for the board to make. But the other part that made me think about it with Mr. Raver's comment is another facet of this schools of distinction by 2030. And Chris and I, Faye, talked about this probably a month and a half ago, that we're gonna have to start slowly pulling the Band-Aid off realignment. You know, because with grade realignment, and what is the timeline to, you know, you don't wanna tell, you know, the Smith family in March that next August, you're going to a different school.
Yeah.
How much lead time do we need to give the community? So that's another big project for the administration and the board to, it's gonna
Yep.
all roll together with this schools of distinction.
Yep.
It's really nice
initiative.
when you can keep siblings together. You know, so I don't know how you roll that out to minimize that.
Sure. I'll put it this way, we don't have a choice to come up with a good plan.
No.
This train is on the track, and we certainly got to come up with the plan. And I think it's one of the compelling reasons we went down this path too, is to stop the craziness of our beginning of the year oversubscription and
Sure.
moving families around at the last minute. So if you can envision a world where we don't do that, it's possible. So we'll start working with the new bus software and figuring out how we can move that forward, because you did support TransFinder, new bus software. There's GIS software that I think will speed up our process. In the past, I think Chambersburg has had many realignment plans that never made it to fruition. But I think we're gonna bring this one across the finish line. So yeah, stay tuned. Stay tuned.
You turn it over to Mr. Fry.
All right, good evening, everyone. Nice to be here in front of you again since April. That was a great presentation. I'll try not to get too in the weeds tonight, but I think the one main point, and Mr. Norcross very correctly said, you know, that was the big picture plan, and me and the PFM team will be here with you all along the way to provide you with whatever information you have and that you need, and I'll keep updating that we call that the master plan, showing different steps for different sized borrowings. But as Mr. Norcross says, tonight we're trying to kind of narrow the focus just to start the train down the track on step one, which is to borrow, and has always been step one, to borrow around this time to get something on the books, lock in a portion of the plan, and I'll get more to that in a second. But quickly on interest rates on page 2, the municipal bond market, since I just looked when I was coming down here to the site tonight, so I was here on April 8th. Interest rates in the municipal bond market for this index is exactly the same as it was on April 8th, which is kind of unbelievable, because right after that, the tariffs were announced. There was all kinds of volatility in the market. Things have stabilized. Interest rates in this chart on the bottom are exactly where they were in April. As you may know from all the news, in the next month, in the September meeting, the Fed will likely lower its short-term borrowing rate, the Fed funds rate. That's already been priced into the market. But yeah, there's a lot of noise on inflation and tariffs and jobs and so forth, so we'll keep our eye on that. But big picture, interest rates in the long-term municipal bond market remain attractive. They're still they're about historical averages. On page 3, won't go over this, we just always include it just for your reference. It's just all the bonds that the district has outstanding. And I bring it up only because the Fed is lowering short-term interest rates. A lot of your borrowings, you can see, are only maybe 10 years to go. And so some of them will become eligible to be refinanced. So we'll be watching that. And next year, when you go to do a bigger borrowing for the projects, there's pretty good likelihood that there'll be a couple maturities in there, because each bond, different than your home mortgage, each maturity of a bond issue has a different interest rate. So we'll be picking and choosing to see if there's any maturities of particular bonds that can be refinanced for savings. Basically try to go from 4% to 3%, for instance, because of the yield curve. So again, hopefully that would just be some gravy or a cherry on top as we borrow next year for new money. We might be able to throw in a refinancing as well. So then just wanted to outline on page 4, Again, you know, the past couple presentations, I've been showing you the kind of the master plan of various steps over the next several years. This is trying to just narrowly focus in on this first step. You know, we know you have major projects coming. The numbers are going to move around. The timing might move around. But again, in number 3 here, the first step was always to borrow $10 million or less this time of year before you have to settle by December. The reason for that is on 3A, as some of the board members remember, if local governments can borrow under $10 million in a calendar year, there's certain advantages such as slightly lower interest rates on the bonds, and importantly, a 5-year call date so you can refinance them quicker if possible. So you see a lot of, particularly Pennsylvania school districts right now, my colleagues are out like I'm at tonight with you. There are many other districts doing similar borrowings to try to get you have to kind of get the meetings in place because you have to settle by New Year's Eve to get this in for the calendar year. So it's a good financing tool. And so we always ask as part of our due diligence, you have to have $10 million or less. The district, if you look in 3B, did have a couple leases with Dell and Ford that added up to about $3.4 million. So when we net that out, this borrowing would be about $6.6 million. So we'll size it appropriately to make sure it gets that bank qualification status. So it'll be about $6.6 million. And again, this is just kind of the first step. Lots to come down the road, and you know, certainly with you all on the way. And we'll get through the next, but number 5, the parameters bond resolution, because I know some of the board members haven't been through this before. The next step would be at your October 28th meeting. That's more of a legal, that's when the legal vote would happen, where the board would officially adopt a parameters bond resolution. It uses the Pennsylvania Local Government Unit Debt Act as the kind of the backbone of how that resolution's set up, where you set a maximum par amount and a maximum interest rate. And then that's the final board action that's needed. And then once all the bond documents and everything's ready, we'd be able to go out into the market in early November and actually lock in the bond rates. So that would be the next step. The resolution would also include a bond purchase agreement with an underwriter. Raymond James would be the underwriter. They're one of the leading K through 12 underwriters in Pennsylvania. So they would be a negotiated sale with Raymond James, and that would be part of the resolution. And again, that would be your last vote. And then from there, my office would take it across the finish line. And on the next page is just as of this week or last week when we ran this in the blue, if we did about a $6.6 million borrowing over about 25 years, the payments are column 4, roughly $465,000 of payments each year over the next 25 years. And so these are just estimates. That's what would be locked in once we actually have the bond sale. And then lastly is just the timeline. Again, we are here tonight to review this. We're positioned to get everything rolling. We need a lot of information from Mrs. Stauffer regarding the district to go to Moody's, the credit rating agency. The district has a great credit rating of AA3. Suspect with their great cash reserves that you're in a position to maintain that rating because the district's in good position. But that rating call, whenever you do a bond issue, you always have to go to get a new credit rating for that bond issue so the investors know exactly what the credit rating on that bond issue is.
Any chance of getting a better rating?
I would say if trends continue, I would say normally yes, except when you have a big borrowings, they know we're going to have to tell them you're going to have borrowings coming. But honestly, with Pennsylvania school districts right now are in a tough position given the state.
Okay.
But I know even on our last call, I mean, the calls go much better when we can show, there's no downward pressure, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah, things look great.
Great.
And a good credit rating helps the interest rate, so that's all good news. And again, on October 28th, we'd be back here with your bond counsel for that resolution. And then probably the following week, if everything's in order, we'd go do the negotiated sale and the bond pricing, lock everything in so that the bonds would then settle in December, the money would become available for your projects and everything be done. And then we'd be back here, next spring as things refine. That multi-step plan will continue to change. We'll be there to change it with you all along the way. But happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Fry? I think you answered my question earlier, Mr. Fry, but I'm gonna need, because I was gonna ask you, you know, we know we're gonna have to, looks like we're gonna have to borrow more than 200 million, maybe at least 217 million. So I was gonna ask you, why stop short of 10 million at step one? But what is the other 3.4 million that's capping this at 6.6?
Dell and Ford.
I can answer that, Mr. Norcross. So earlier this year, the technology department brought forward the Dell lease. That's the primary amount of that, which was done at bank qualified. And we also did have a few leases for vans with Ford Company, so that's why that was reduced.
So the technology's probably the big one, I guess.
Yeah, it's the
Vans
majority,
vans
yes,
isn't
yes.
Probably
No.
a big number.
Yeah, it's all Dell, yeah.
Why are we using a bond for that?
It's
As
not a
opposed-
bond, it's not a bond, it's just the financing because you're leasing it. And it was done at a bank qualified lease.
Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't done through the bond
No.
market. It
But
was,
it counts against the 10 million.
right, because it was issued as tax exempt.
Okay.
Darn.
Yeah.
Other questions for Mr. Fry?
And then next year, we can't, 10 million, you know, there's no point in staying under 10 million.
Right,
Because
I
we're
mean-
too far into the project.
It's more of a financing strategy. If you can and it works, you do it.
Yep.
If once now you're gonna be doing major borrowings. Maybe the last step, we do in conjunction with some cash, you know, so there's always moves along the way, depending on the timing. But yeah, it looks like this will be the last one for a little while.
Okay, so for the board, if you look at Mr. Fry's sheet 6, you know, our voting meeting in October, we will be voting on the bond resolution for the series of 2025. One of many votes.
All right, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Mr.
Have a nice
Fry.
night.
Thank you. Yep. You have to go back.
All right. Section 5, consent agenda items. These are items that at our voting meeting at the end of the month, they will be voted for on in one block, if you will. So as normal, follow the same steps I have been following. Ask Mr. Bigger and his team if they have anything to comment on 5.01 through 5.06, and then ask the same question to the board, but let the administration go first if there's any information or additional data you want to present to any of those items.
We don't have any at this time on that section.
Okay. Board members, any questions on any of those items, 5.01 through 5.06? Okay. All right. So those 6 items will go on to the first consent agenda item and the voting meeting at the end of the month or later in the month. And then, you know, we have been having 2 consent agenda items. One's that there'll be these 6 and anything new that comes on the table between now and our next meeting. Section 7, Finance and Facilities, Solar Energy Systems, Fayetteville and Scotland. Mrs. Stauffer, Mr. Varner, who's on first?
I'm going to let Matt speak to this. I mean, I can speak to it, but we had brought forward a few months ago the fact that we were awarded two grants for PA Solar. This is moving that project along, so I'll let Matt speak to what this is.
Yes, back in December, you approved a resolution for us to submit and apply for the Pennsylvania Solar for Schools grant. Last month in Mr. Bigger's report, he, reported that we were successful in those grants. So this is an agreement to move forward with CM3 Building Solutions to install solar energy systems at both Fayetteville and Scotland Elementary. As you can see included in the agenda item, the total system installation costs are estimated at $1 million, just over $1,500,000. The investment tax credit through the federal government is about $469,000. The PA Solar for Schools grant is about $625,000. We have a $43,000 utility rebate. So the total net project cost for Chambersburg Area School District is about $426,000. And the potential net energy savings for the life of this project is about $3.7 million to the district. I'd be happy to answer any other questions about this item.
Matt, just confirming this is in conjunction with the infrastructure grant for the roof.
Well, yes. It's not really in conjunction, but the reason for selecting these two elementary schools was because A, they were not going to be affected by the schools of distinction, but B, we were awarded the infrastructure grants and we did roof projects at these elementary schools just this past summer. So.
Did I understand that, and I forget now which school it is, but one school, it's going to be totally rooftop, and one school, there's going to be ground as well as rooftop arrays?
Yes, at Scotland Elementary School, it will be all rooftop system. At Fayetteville Elementary School, it'll be a combination rooftop and ground mount array.
And the rationale or, the reason?
Solar energy systems on the ground are more efficient because they can be positioned at 20 degrees and they get, you get more output on your solar panels when you can position those correctly. The way and the position that Fayetteville Elementary School faces, it's really not feasible to put solar panels on certain sections of that roof. And then there were some equipment restrictions as well with that roof. So the goal was to offset 100% of the energy usage at Fayetteville Elementary School. So to achieve that, we had to do a combination system.
Are those panels going to interrupt any of the usage for fields or playgrounds?
No, the location of those panels, if you can picture the Fayetteville Elementary School, are along the side. It does not interfere with the current ball fields, but it's in that section of grass between Fayetteville Elementary School and the old Rite Aid. It's an area that we worked with administration that they don't really utilize for play fields or any type of activities throughout the school day.
And those energy savings, are they calculated over what period of time?
That's calculated over a 30-year period.
Thank you.
Is it safe to say that the consideration of the positioning of the building is, like you just mentioned, it affects if it's going to be a rooftop or not versus ground? And I guess my question would be, that's going to be considered when we think about the new construction as well, right?
Yeah, we're doing a feasibility study for solar at the new construction. Again, there are some design benefits for natural light and, solar gain in areas of a school, and yes, that was considered in on the design.
Thank you.
I just want to thank Matt for applying for this project. It was not an easy task to apply for this one. The timelines, the expectations were pretty high, and we were thankful we got it because the work wouldn't have justified not getting it. So thank you for all the energy and effort you put into getting the grants.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt, can I just ask one question? If you guys want to see the layout in that attachment, it shows you exactly where they're going to be. It's about 32, 35, something like that. It's pretty cool looking, and it says that in there. But I read in there, the first 3 years, they said that they're actually going to measure it, right, to make sure that we're actually realizing that. After those 3 years, did they do the maintenance on that, or do we do that? I thought it said we could purchase that option from them, or is that something that and maybe we're not there yet. I was just curious.
Yeah, so this is a performance-based contract, so they are guaranteeing the benchmarks that they put out there for energy savings. They guarantee that. They will monitor it for the first 3 years just to show that we are meeting those benchmarks.
Okay.
At that time, we have the option that, and their monitoring and their maintenance is included in those O&M costs.
Right.
And so after 3 years, if we decide that we are satisfied and we don't want to continue with the O&M through CM3, then that cash flow analysis that showed those costs would be additional savings too. Now, having said that, it would be in our best interest and good practice to do some, maintenance O&M on those systems as well. But that is an option to potentially buy that back from them.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Doing some math, 125,000 on average is the annual savings. If that's helpful to anyone, over 30 years.
Yeah, and that's figured on today's current
Right.
electricity rates. And, there is a modest increase figured in that over the years, but what we don't know is where the energy prices are going to go. So,
The energy prices go up is our assumption, and then do the units become less effective?
yeah,
Towards
and
the
if
end
you
of their
look
life?
at that cash flow analysis in that attached document, as you can see, you get further out, the O&M costs go up, but also the production goes down. But
Right.
that's all calculated into your overall savings.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. 7.02, gifts, grants, and donations. Information's in front of us. Mr. Woodman, anything to add? Questions from board members? Okay, we'll vote on this later in the month. Section 8, policy and legislation. 8.01, anything to comment on that, Mrs. Stauffer? The 8.01,
8.01, sorry, Mike.
PSBA elections of officers and at-large representatives.
Yes.
That'll just be a card in front of us later in the month?
Yes, I apologize, yes.
Okay,
Very difficult decisions to make here.
yeah. Kind of like voting for the judge of X, Y, and Z in 18th Circuit of 14th County in the 3rd District or whatever. Policies with no changes, it'll just, and then we'll vote on 803 and 804, I guess. Do we know what policies they will?
Yeah, when you
there will
click
be?
on that, you can see each one is laid out
Yep.
with the examples. So
Okay.
this will be the time to ask questions, primarily on the second read, because those are formally adopted after second read. Your first read still buys you a little time from first read till second read in November. Or, I'm sorry, October.
And this will be a recurring item, if you remember from last evening, one of those superintendent goals was a 10-year cycle, and I don't know how many hundreds of policies there are, but if you have to touch every one of them at least once every 10 years, you're gonna make this, it's gonna be a reoccurring event. Any questions on policies? If not, certainly opportunity to have a question later in the month before we vote. Item 10.01, members of the audience are invited to comment on agenda and non-agenda items. 2 have signed in, but don't worry, anyone can speak. But first, John Jordan, item 7.01, solar energy.
Yeah, I was looking at this and, with the solar energy thing, and Ms. Gogler kind of put out some thoughts about additional ways to make some savings. This, to me, I'd like to encourage everybody, looking at the figures, Mr. Verner went over it, for the cost we're gonna put into it, it's basically a no-brainer, so I'd like everybody to definitely vote for this and have this work. If we can come up with some other ideas maybe in this with energy savings, we ought to look into it. And I'd personally like to thank Matt Werner for working so hard to get this grant for us, and I'm very happy about that. Thank you very much. And that's all I have to say. I just think it's a no-brainer, and I hope everybody supports it. And thanks for considering it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Mrs. Jordan, non-agenda topic.
Actually, it is an agenda item. But before I start with my statement, my school taxes are $4,100. And over this past weekend, I had to write 2 checks for estimated taxes. One, $1,500 to the federal government, another $500 to the state. Now, the state, I feel my money's in the morgue. And I sent that out to our state lawmakers. My money's not going anywhere, as is this school district. So that's what I'm gonna say. And the estimated taxes come out to $8,000 a year for my husband and I. So if my taxes go up $200 more because of schools, I can afford it, because I can afford $8,000, but I don't like it when the state's not passing a budget. At the last board meeting, the dollar amount of $26 million was mentioned at your table with much caution based on this dollar amount. Because fear was put out there onto YouTube, I decided to look at 1 year's worth of bills paid by you starting from June 2024 and ending in June 2025. I figured the following: if we could reduce costs associated with a pending increased debt payment. If the district didn't have to pay $9.7 million to greedy cyber charter school owners, that would reduce this annual debt payment. If the district didn't have to pay $278,631.85 to Shalom Christian Academy, that would reduce this annual debt payment. If this district didn't have to pay $179,171.28 to Cumberland Valley Christian School, that would reduce this annual debt payment. All the above schools increased in costs while debt continually gets paid down by law. If the district didn't have to pay $33,146.10 to the Franklin County Probation Office, that would reduce this annual debt payment. Now I understand why $849 of my $1,103 county tax bill goes to criminal justice around these parts. If the district didn't have to pay a taxpayer $9,658.25 in a settlement case, that would reduce this annual debt payment. Adding all those vendor costs up, that $26 million in annual debt payment would look more like $16.2 million alongside the current debt. The good news is this: you have no large legal bills to pay. You paid Crabtree and Rabaugh $860.60 in the 1 year time frame.
Start wrapping it up, Mrs. Jordan,
I
please.
will. I have a couple more sentences. You have fund balances which will pay off some of the construction costs too. Debt is not new to me. It's not new to you either. Schools are used by children. Children deserve your attention, and that's why you were elected to serve. Displaying fear and anxiety is not warranted.
Thank you, Mrs. Jordan.
Thank you
Okay.
very much.
Any other members of the audience for agenda or non-agenda items? Okay. Item 12.0, board members, new business discussion only for future board meetings, committee of the whole, whatnot. Yes, sir, Mr. Walker.
I have, we'd mentioned maybe somebody appointing somebody to go looking after the charter stuff. Was that, did we follow through with that?
The
or is that-
Clear software is what we recently purchased to help with residency requirements. So yes, we're on top of that. I think as soon as we got the software, I think Mrs. Stein was using it day one, if I remember her excitement down the hallway. And just on an aside, it also helps with students who maybe leave and we don't get a records request. Until we get one, our attendance counts against us, because until we get a records request from another school that they're enrolled, they're absent, they're absent, they're absent. Well, sometimes we're able to find that they have moved somewhere out of state and we get that record. And then we can make that decision that, hey, they found residence at a school in Ohio, let's say. So it's helping us in more ways than just the residency for cyber school.
Can make that dashboard look good.
Yeah, hopefully our attendance grows up, yes.
Yeah, I have a comment, I guess, more than anything right now, but, so it's not really new business because it's kind of out there already, but in a matter of just a few weeks, there'll be a monumental event called the Trojan Walk. And within that, the confines of that walk, there's going to be a 100-yard dash. I see several worthy opponents might be sitting there out there in the audience, and just here to say, I hope everyone is aware of it, can recognize this for a very worthy cause, no matter who wins. But somewhere in this room, there is a winner.
Other items? I assume that's not a agenda topic for a future meeting. Okay, good. Okay, I did skip over information, district enrollment summary, and the Transburg Area Foundation annual report. Questions, comments? Hearing none, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.